Far too often, LGBTQ plus business owners believe they have to choose between authenticity and being successful. Through these real-life stories, LGBTQ plus listeners aspiring for success can gain valuable insights to navigate their path to being both queer and successful. Hello, everyone. It is me, Hunter J. McNair, your hostess with the mostest, back again for this week's episode of Queer and Successful. This week, we are talking about profit. We're talking about money, and we're talking about ways that you should be leading with revenue in your business endeavors. Now, I'm joined by my good Judy, my good pal, Cam Mason, who truly is an expert in this. Like, if there is someone that I was to tell you knows more about how to manage money in their business, I cannot think of anyone better than Cam. This call was amazing. I hope you all learn a lot of amazing things from it. And as always, you can participate in these calls live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time at successfulcall.com. Now, without further ado, take a listen. Happy Monday, everyone. Happy return back from a long weekend. And this week, I am super excited to have my good Judy, my good pal, back with me, Cam Mason, to talk about a topic that a lot of us don't like to have, which is usually money. And by a lot of us, I mean mostly myself. Money is something that I think for queer people as a whole, but also people like myself who maybe didn't grow up with family who had money or talked about money, can be a conversation that is often not only uncomfortable, but often a conversation where we don't know where to start. Yeah. So the conversation we're going to be having today mostly revolves around how to lead with revenue to accelerate your business. And I think we have this conversation a lot, especially with newer agents or agents who are trying to figure out what they should be doing to actually propel their business instead of just throwing money away. And I'm excited to have someone like Cam, who is so educated in this topic, with us today. So Cam, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so Cam Mason here in Central Indiana. I live in Noblesville, Indiana. My office is in Carmel, Indiana. So if you just think of the north side of Indianapolis, it's really my bread and butter, but our team services all of Central Indiana. So I have a team of 5. There's 3 of us in production, 2 admin staff. And I got in the business in 2019. So yeah, love it. I'm also a owner investor of the Keller Williams Market Center that I'm a part of. I'm an owner investor of a title company. I'm a real estate investor. I own rental properties as well. So yeah, I've just grown a lot and learned a lot about passive income and finances and how to keep a business afloat when you have other people that rely on you for salaries and, their livelihoods as well. So I've just spent a lot of time around people teaching or learning from them on how they run their businesses and what's important to them and what mistakes have they made in hopes that I can try to avoid some of those. And then I've also made a ton of mistakes along the way that have helped me kind of be able to pivot quickly and learn, okay, that didn't work. We're not trying that again. We need to look at something else. So a little bit about me.
I love it. Now, your 2 salary people, are they both full-time?
No, I have 1 part-time and 1 full-time.
1 part-time, 1 full-time. Great. So when we're talking about leading with revenue, what does that phrase usually mean to you? Like, how do you think that has really shaped the way you've built your business over the years?
So to me, leading with revenue is don't spend money until you are making money, until there is income coming in, and not even just income, but profit. Until there is profit coming in, we have to be very, very careful on what we're spending money in. I see agents get in the business all the time, and I understand it because I did the same thing. And you spend so much time focusing on like, I got to get my business cards and I got to get a website and I got to get a logo and a brand and all of that stuff. And the reality is, no, you don't need any of that. You need to just go out and sell houses first, figure out if you even like this industry, and get some money coming in so that then, as the money's coming in, you can start making decisions. Okay, now I have a better idea of what this industry is and what maybe I want my brand to look like. Or I found a company that does for sale signs and stuff like that for cheaper. So I'm going to order them from there. I still order my for sale signs from the same company online as I did when I first got in the business. And there are agents that I spend $25 for a for sale sign. And there are agents that go to Fast Signs here and spend $150 on a for sale sign. I'm too cheap for that. So
Well, it's the sign's not necessarily selling the house, right?
that's
When we're
right.
talking about, especially when we're talking about leading with revenue. And I was having this conversation earlier with someone about one of the biggest mistakes that new business owners or new real estate agents, one of the biggest mistakes that they make is kind of throwing like pasta at the wall to see what sticks. In other words, just throwing money at everything just because it's fun. Like you mentioned, right? Like buying fancy business cards, getting $300 signs, and maybe sending out mailers, spending $1,000 on mailers to send out one time only, and then you don't get anything from it, and you just toss the money away. And that is such a mistake that people can make. But they get excited about that, right? How did you, I mean, like, how did you, what do you think about like you made you decide to not be that person? Like, what were the lessons that you kind of led with there?
Well, I think number one, I'll tell you guys right now, I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I would be where I am today financially, but even owning a business. Like my background is in music theater. If you know me, I always say like my background was singing and dancing on Main Street USA at Disney. I never took a finance class. I never took a business class. Like I didn't know about any of this stuff. I'm fortunate enough, both of my parents are entrepreneurs, but not smart with money. I just helped my dad this year. He's 63. For the first time in his life, he set up a retirement account. He's never had a retirement, savings, anything. And that was really important to me to help. So it's not like I came from a family that we were having money conversations or people were teaching me. I think what it came from was, and probably a lot of people can relate to this, is when you come from an upbringing that there is a lot of struggle and there isn't wealth or education, you always dream of a better lifestyle for yourself than maybe what you were raised in. And so for me, I think when I started in this business, I was making a lot of money. And I also realized how quickly that money can go away if you're not smart with it. So fortunately, I had the right people around me that were like, you need to hire a CPA right away. You need to hire a financial advisor right away. Don't spend money until you're making money. And so really it was, I knew I didn't have the education that I needed around this topic. So I needed to bring in the right experts around me to help me make smart decisions and to watch. My CPA, we meet every single quarter. My financial advisor, we meet every single quarter. So if I make decisions that are not smart in my life and my business, I have to explain that to those people. And it could end up costing me. It could cost me in taxes. It can cost me a lot of different things. But as my world and my team has grown too, to where I now have not only my own salary, but two other, salaried or team members that rely on me to pay them an income every 2 weeks, that creates some pressure for me to make sure I am always making really smart decisions in my business.
Mm. Out of curiosity, like how often are you looking at your P&L?
Oh, multiple times a week. I
Yeah.
am like obsessed with the dollars. I look at my bank accounts multiple times a day. I look at the P&L multiple times a week. We have a monthly finance meeting as well to just go over our numbers. How were we on profit? Where were we too high on expenses? Is there anything we need to cut? Is there anything we need to add? So the more the thing that I think we end up getting making hang on where we end up getting things wrong in this is money is such a taboo topic. It's really tough, and especially in seasons of struggle, the last thing you want to do is go look at the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
You
that
don't,
there's something wrong. You don't want to look at it. You're
that's
like
exactly right.
anything but do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I'd rather just not see it. And then we all in our brains, we always think just one more sale and I can pay for X, Y, and Z. If I just have one more sale, I'll get out of the credit card debt I put myself in over the past 3 months because I wasn't having a lot of business. So just a few more sales and that'll take place. Well, we know in our industry that is never guaranteed. There are certainly things we can do to make sure we have business coming in, but that's a conversation for another day. But the
Yeah.
money aspect of it, the relationship with our money is so important. If we think of plants or flowers, if you just ignore them for a month, they're going to be dead. Same thing with the relationship with our money. If we just ignore it and pretend that it's not there anymore, it's going to end up dying as well. And what you come back to is going to be a mess that can be hard and embarrassing to get out of.
I think
So,
that's an interesting analogy because I think that most people treat their money like fake flowers.
mm,
Right, where it's like, okay, I just have a credit card and it's just this, like I'll just swipe it and it's just this invisible thing that I never have to pay attention to, right? Like it can be that extreme. People's relationships with money can be that extreme, especially if you don't have the upbringing or you haven't learned it. For people who kind of fall into the trap of like spending all their money, and doing that where they're not leading with revenue, kind of the opposite because of whatever reason that they may have made, you know, how do you tell people to prioritize their spending?
how to prioritize their spending. So,
Yeah,
I
like
mean, I think it depends on what your organization looks like. If you're a solo agent, obviously it's going to be different. Your expenses may be a lot lower than what mine are as a business. It takes me about 18 grand a month to operate my business. So that's salaries, expenses, office space, everything that we have. It takes about 18 grand a month. And I know that number because when I look at our team's income for that month, what's coming in, if we don't hit 18K minimum, we're at a loss. And I'm
right.
also having a conversation with the team that, hey, we're in the red this month, or hey, this is a profit month. And I'm very open and honest with my team members about our numbers because, one of the things I think as team members you don't always see or recognize. You just think the rainmaker is making a crap ton of money, and yet Hunter and anybody else that runs a team, you and I know there's a lot of expenses. There's a lot of overhead that, regardless of whether a sale happens or not, those things are still going to be there. So, if you're running a solo operation organization, your expenses are going to be a lot lower. So, things that might be worthwhile for you is going to be some of the marketing and things like that to help increase your business, spending money on client events to help love on your past database, creating a 72 touch calendar with systematized things that go out to stay in touch with your database in order to bring past clients back, but also to increase referrals. Those
Right.
kinds of things are things that I would spend money on. But I also run an organization where we don't buy leads. We've never bought leads. We don't spend money on online advertising or billboards or anything like that. And I'm not shaming anybody that does. I know people that spend $100,000 a month on Zillow and they have huge businesses. And that's great for them. It's just not my business. I would
Right.
much rather track my numbers and know where our business is coming from and then reinvest money into those things. So, like for us, client events, they work. Our 72 touch calendar, that's what works. Providing small gifts when people send us referrals, that works. So, those are the things that we're going to keep track of and invest money in.
Well, and I think the conversation that I have with people, and I even have this with my team a lot, whenever we're talking about money spend or we're talking about even activities that we're doing to generate business, is what are we holding these things accountable to? Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, if I spend $1,000 on mailers, I want to see at least a three times return on that, right? And that's where, when we talk about not wanting to buy cold leads, right? Cold business and that kind of advertising, the reason why is because the ROI is not there, right? Usually. And there are
Yep.
people who spend 100 grand and they'll make 120 grand, and that's their kind of way that they, they manage that. But really looking at having a clarity on that, what the return of what the money spend is, I think is what you kind of lead with, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's that whole idea in the MRA book, the red light, green light. Like if you are gonna have money go out, you have to be able to watch and track. And obviously give it time. Like you don't just do the 1,000 mailers one time and say, well, nobody called me, it doesn't work. Like if you're going to do farming, we know it takes somewhere between 12 to 18 months for that to be consistent and for leads to start showing up. So that's the decision you have to make ahead of time is like, can I budget enough to be able to do a consistent mailer for 12 to 18 months? Not let me drop $1,000 or $500 on a mailer one time, didn't get the ROI, now I'm out.
Right.
Or let me go buy donuts on the way to my open house, nobody showed up. Open houses don't work. Like
Right.
everything has to be that red light, green light where you're tracking the expenses. Are you getting any sort of return? And after 3 months, 6 months, whatever timeline you set, if you're there to make a decision, this is working and I'm going to double down, maybe I even invest more into it because it's working so well, or this didn't work at all and I gave it every bit of the energy that I possibly could give, and so we're going to pivot and look at something else.
Well, and I think you're calling out something that I think is important, which is like not only looking at money spend, as part of like your budget, but also looking at what the total budget spend is. Because if we're talking, like you said, we're talking about mailers, that's 12 months. But even when we're talking about hiring, right? When we're talking about hiring, most people don't plan out, okay, well, I'm going to have this hire for 6 months and I need to go ahead and have 6 months there to make sure that I can commit to see if this gives me the return or not. And so you can't really do that unless you have the revenue to do that, which is why profit has to happen first. You mentioned that I think you said 18,000 was your monthly budget. I'm assuming, and I'm going to make sure there's clarity for everyone else listening, that includes your personal salary.
It does.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that I wanted to call that out specifically because even if you're an an independent agent, independent, business owner, you should still be factoring in what your salary is before you consider what your profit is,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very important that we get real and right with our numbers and even just sit down long enough to, if you just go back 30 days, like if you don't know where to begin, go back 30 days and just pull whatever you're using, whether it's a debit card or a credit card, pull all those expenses that were business related, total them all up and go off of that number. That can be your starting place. Know what you need to pay yourself for a salary, and that's going to be your monthly budget that you have to make. Because even at bare minimum, if you can just have a number in your head every single month that says, this is the amount of money I have to bring in this month in order to be a profitable business, that is going to be eons beyond what 97% of us in this industry are. I talk to agents all the time that I'm like, what's your monthly P&L, or how often do you look at it? And it's like, I don't even have one. And I can only imagine the stress that that would create for me if I don't have a P&L, or if I'm not looking at expenses. I mean, just imagine, I don't know, McDonald's, like just throwing money out left and right. They have no idea how much money they brought in that month and they're just hiring like crazy. That business is probably going to shut down at some point pretty quickly. But that's why there's systems and stuff and models in place to make sure that we know what our monthly expenses are, we know how much money we have to bring in. And then when you get to halfway through the month and you're behind on your goals or you're behind on revenue, okay, what do I got to do to kick in for the next 2 weeks to make sure that I still am a profitable business this month? One of my goals on my vision board, I keep my vision board as the back or the screensaver of my phone, was to profit all 12 months. Because even as a business, there have been months where we did not profit and we were in the hole. And then you have maybe 3 months where it's grand and great and there's lots of money coming in. So even for me, it was getting to a place where our business is profiting all 12 months of the year. And that's something that we're continuing to work on. And that's why I also communicate that with my team. We're in the red this month, or this is a profit month. This is great. And ever since I started doing that, and having really real and honest conversations with our team members, I've seen more buy-in as well, and people being more aware of what we're spending money on, what they're spending money on as well, as a team.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like you've set it up so that your salary basically covers what you need to survive, right?
Yep.
And then everything else is all the expenses. And then at the bottom of that, you've got, so you have what your salary, your all your expenses, that's what you need to survive. And then anything that's over 0%, right, is a profitable month. This is just giving people clarity. And then we can say, okay, with this profit, where does this get split? How what do we invest this in or choose not to invest things in, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you've obviously built a great business out there. And I want to know, out of curiosity, like, what do you think has been the like most revenue producing financial decision that you think you've made? Or some of,
So what was that?
or some of them, whichever one comes to mind.
Yeah. So I would say talent
Hmm.
and our systems, as MREA as that sounds. So
Yeah.
we don't buy leads. We don't we use commands. So which is a if you're not with Keller Williams, it is a CRM that I pay $100 a month for in my tech fees. So I don't pay for any outside CRMs or anything like that. Like I am very, very cautious on what I spend money on in our business because again, I know every dollar that goes out, like every dollar that goes out, I want it to be like a little soldier that goes out there and recruits and tries to find three more dollars to bring back in. And
I
that's the
love
way
that.
you've got to look at your money. Um,
I love that.
and
I'm imagining little like dollar soldiers
my little dollar soldiers going
marching
out
out.
there,
Yeah.
yeah, trying
Yeah.
to find three more dollars to bring back with them.
Mhm.
So our 72 touch was like the best thing that we ever invested in and tracked. So literally going through and started tracking like where's every lead coming from? Where's every closing coming from? Okay, it's coming from Sphere and not open houses. For me, I don't need to do an open house every single weekend, but I am going to make sure I invest in spending time in our systems and things like that, and touch calendar and client events and those kinds of things because it is bringing a tenfold ROI back to it. Something that I started doing about 2 years ago was listing videos. There was nobody really in our market that was doing video. And actually, there was one other agent, and I kept wanting to learn from him, kept wanting to learn from him, and he just wouldn't give me the time of day. And so I was like, you know what? Forget it. I've got a music theater background. I'll just go out and hire somebody and figure it out. And so it's all just been testing for the past two
Yeah.
years. And now I have so much fun with it. But the second, I would say about a year and a half ago, as these videos started picking up more traction and I was getting better and better at them, I mean, our listing numbers that we take have more than doubled because people see the investment that we're making. We're not just sticking the for sale sign in the yard. And I have now a resume online to prove exactly what we're going to do to help market their home. So there's just been a few things like that that I think we invest money in our business that have brought tenfold the value
Right.
and
So it
profit.
sounds, so it sounds like the non-negotiables when we're talking about spending money. And I say spending money, but really it's about investing in your business. That's how we should be looking at it, right? The non-negotiables there are that we're getting a three times ROI, that we're not just spending the money just to spend the money, right? It's coming from, what the profit is that we have. And we've kind of created and then we've created a plan around what the expectation for that return is. Is
Yep,
that right?
that's
Any
right.
anything else?
No, you
I
nailed
mean,
it. Good recap.
isn't it funny how simple that can
How
be?
simple it is. Yeah. The
Well,
reality is that like
yeah,
we so complicate all of this
yeah,
because it just does feel scary. There's moments where it's felt scary for me. The P&L that I have, I did not create. Somebody else created that for me, and now all I have to do is plug and chug numbers. I don't even know how to hardly work spreadsheets. I break it all the time, and I have to call my best friend and I'm like, I broke the spreadsheet. I don't know how to make it math. All I know how to do is plug numbers in and then let it tell me what it is. And then I send that to my CPA and she says, great, you're on track for the taxes that you're going to pay this month. Or she says, hey, you need to increase it, or you're going to have too much. And so you're going to get a refund. Like it's all these people that just help keep me aligned. It's not me knowing tax code or knowing financial anything. Like it's just surrounding myself with the right people that help keep me on track. And then making sure the systems are in place, including me. Part of the system is me sitting down and actually doing that work, or our financial advisors and CPAs like sitting down with me to do that work.
I love it. Now, when we're talking about your profit, right, and we're talking about hiring and marketing and maybe adding to our expenses, how do you approach budgeting for that or any type of other growth?
Yeah. So one of the big expenses we've had was talent. Last year, I decided to bring on a full-time executive assistant to really be my right-hand gal. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. I read a book last year. Oh gosh, what was that book called?
I
Buy
love
Back
that.
Your Time. I read it twice because it was so good. And then I hired an executive assistant from it
Love that.
because I just realized there was so much stuff that I was doing that was taking so much of my time and taking me away from the things that I needed to do, I love to do, and really the things that were going to increase the revenue for us.
Mhm.
So, because of that, hiring talent, it's not something you can just do on a whim and say, "Hey, I'm stressed out this week. I'm going to go hire somebody."
You
For me,
can, but you shouldn't.
you can, but when the revenue is not coming in right away, that's going to feel really stressful.
Right.
I even made that decision at the end of the year. Carrot came on, I want to say November. Yeah,
Okay.
November. And traditionally, at least in our market, November to February is typically a lot slower for us. And that showed up this year as well. So if I had only just thought I'm going to hire her and just hope that the business shows up, we would have drastically struggled. In fact, I would have had to let her go because we would not have had the income that we needed to pay three different salaries. And actually, up until end of February, there was four of us on salaries.
Oh, wow.
Um, so there was a lot of expense, but I knew going into that where we were going to be. And I had also spent time for about 6 months building up our reserve account with the plan to hire talent.
Mm.
And so I try to keep a minimum of 6 months worth of expenses, not only in my personal life, but in my business life as well. And so when we have those down moments, we're okay. And I tell the team, even if we took a loss this month, nobody needs to go out and look for a new job. We're okay and trust that I've done the work and continue to do the work to make sure that our business has the reserves that we need. So even when there's moments of struggle or moments of down in profit, we're still okay.
Well, and I think what's kind of interesting is that, we all start out by ourselves, right? We all start out on our own. And we may be tracking these numbers on our own, or we may not be doing it very well, right, on our own. But then as we add people into our organization, I think it's fascinating and cool and good that you make sure that you're still having these conversations with the people in your organization because you don't want to be alone in it, right? And I think there's also a little bit of buy-in that you're creating behind, okay, this is why we need what we need, and this is why I'm asking you all to like sell more houses.
Yeah.
Um, and and this is kind of that transparency that I think a lot of people fear that giving will cause problems, but you've taken it and said, no, if anything, it needs to happen because it creates the buy-in and it creates a lot more clarity for us.
That's yeah, yeah.
Now, Tom, tell me about like a time where you think that you made maybe an uncomfortable business move, like spending on something big that maybe ended up accelerating your business.
I would still always go back to talent. Anytime
Yeah.
I have hired talent, I haven't always made the right decisions in hiring talent,
Hmm.
but the good talent I have hired, Wayne, I am in Indianapolis, Central Indiana. The good talent I have hired has always paid off tenfold. Our business has grown every single year. We've never gone backwards. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case for us this year. We're trending a little bit ahead of where we were last year. We are definitely not on trend for the big goals we set at the end of last year, but we are trending ahead of last year. And so our business has grown every single year. I totally lost my train of thought. What were you asking?
No, I know I got distracted. What is an uncomfortable business move that you
Oh yeah, talent. So
talent?
talent for sure. I mean, especially ones where it's going to be you're paying someone's payroll. That me hiring someone full time was very scary. And that is also why I read that book twice because I was like, I need to hear this again. I need to have this man tell me through audiobook and then me read it myself that I am spending way too much time on all of these activities and it's actually hindering the business. I needed to get out of my own way so that our business can grow. And that's exactly what has happened. One of the reasons why, for me as a team owner, I actually fell in love with doing the transactions again over the past year. I don't know about you guys, but I go through seasons where I am burnt out. I don't want to show another house. Listing appointments stress me out. If I had to do one more inspection response, I'm going to cry. Like, there's just seasons where that happens. But as a business owner, like, you still have to make certain decisions. I fell in love with the transaction again last year. And so one of the reasons why I hired the executive assistant is I wanted to do more business again. I set a goal for myself this year, and I'm only 4 units away here in July from that goal. That was for the whole year. And it's because she frees up more of my time so that I can focus on the business, on doing the business that I want to do as far as transactions go as well. So I'll probably end up doing about 1.5 times the goal that I set for this year. Who knows? But I'm excited about that because that also brought more profit and revenue into the company because when I, as the team owner, do the business, we keep the business keeps 100% versus having cost of sales based on splits and things like that.
Yeah, and I think the big mistake that people make is, you looked at hiring as an opportunity to make more money, right? Because you're thinking of, if I invest in this person to give me more time, what can I do with that time? Where I think a lot of people make the decision to hire to give themselves more free time. And that's
Well,
the,
I've had that too.
yeah, I mean,
I have
well,
also traveled more this year than I ever have in my entire life.
yeah.
My goal is always 5 weeks of vacation booked, paid for, and on the calendar by December 31st of this year. I will probably be out of the city about 70 to 75 days this year, which is wild. And yet our business is still growing. We are still profitable. I have the lifestyle that I want. And because of the leverage that we've been able to create based on smart financial decisions as well, it's allowed us all to do that. My entire team has traveled more this year than we ever have. And that is very, very encouraging. And as long as we're hitting our goals, I'm always cool with that.
Well, and I think the conversation around that is centered around the clarity that you have given not only yourself but the rest of your team. Because we talk about like life by designs, like kind of thinking about what your life by design looks like. And you should be planning out like vacation time and all that money that you would spend there and creating your goals around it. And so everything that you're doing is not emotional. There's emotion behind why the numbers are there, but the decisions are logic based, right?
Yep.
Like you're not just taking a trip on a whim just because you want to take a trip on a whim. You're taking a trip not on a whim. You're taking the trip because you plan to be able to take a trip on a whim because you put it in a chart. I don't know math. What are math terms? You accounted for it and you made sure that there was a way that you could do it and keep your business afloat. And there's this, I keep saying this year, clarity is kindness. And so really it's just about giving yourself all of this clarity so that you can be kind to yourself throughout the time. Talking about kind of consistency, because I think this can also factor into things. Are there, daily or weekly habits? We talked about, looking at your P&L at least once a week and looking at your bank account like 3 times a day. Are there some daily habits that you tie directly to how you've generated revenue?
So I think again, like if you don't have a good relationship with money, you're going to have to systematize some things for yourself to actually force yourself to sit down and do it. So there are things already on my calendar, like the monthly financial meetings, like those are there. Then the quarterly meetings with CPA, with the financial advisor, like those are already there. I also track my net worth every single month. So that is already on my calendar on the first of every single month to sit down and update all of my numbers on my net worth tracker. All of those things are things for myself, because I know who I am and I'm on the go all the time. I would much rather, trust me, I would much rather sit down and do a lot of other things than crunch numbers and do all of that. But I know for me, I have to systematize it and I have to have the accountability around it. If I don't get my CPA the numbers, then it's going to screw up taxes, and chances are I'm going to have fines and things like that. So I just had to put systems in place for myself. Usually that is on the calendar to sit down and actually do those items, whatever it is, whether it's going over the P&L, whether it's going over numbers with our financial partners, whether it's talking through things with the team as well. Those things all have to be on the calendar for me, or else they won't happen. It's
Yeah.
not on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
And if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. And then, I mean, realistically, though, I mean, people are probably thinking like, oh, I don't have, 20 hours to look at this per week and it's too much. But really, what time are you spending on this?
Oh, I less than even 30 minutes a day usually. I would say the big ones are end of the month, when we're kind of reconciling our books for the month and just making sure, the money we thought was coming in did come in. We had the closings that came in. Did the commission checks that deposited match what's on our numbers? Like that kind of stuff is what takes probably the most amount of time. But as far as like updating net worth tracker, 20 minutes max. As far as taking a look at P&L and expenses, like that's just getting the receipts in and our little receipt, entering them in, double checking it against the QuickBooks account. Okay, we're good. So that kind of stuff. And the more time you spend on it, if you spend 30 minutes a day, it makes it so much easier. Then it's the end of the month and you're like, I have a stack of receipts I got to input. And that's how you end up not doing it, because you're like, well, that does not sound enjoyable. So I'm just gonna go get a coffee instead and then let life happen.
Ice
Um,
cold. Thank you.
yeah, an ice cold brew, which is what's in here too.
Ice cold brew. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing. It's that, it's almost like doing laundry. Like you shouldn't, if you do it like consistently and just, instead of just like doing a big load once and then like deciding to leave it in the dryer for a whole month, it's going to be a pain in the butt when you get around to it.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
And you don't want to do it, but you got to do it because the clothes are just going to sit there. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that what you're telling me and what you're telling us is if you just stay kind of on it and you make it part of like a daily habit versus it being this like big grand thing, it kind of becomes part of your habits. When someone said doing laundry like that, your water bill goes up and detergent expense too. Just saying. I love that. For people who are like thinking about, oh my gosh, where do I start? This is too much. I know you and I have talked a lot about, the book Profit First, which is a great book to talk about how to divvy, bank accounts and where you should be splitting monies and things like that. But for people who are like, I am doing none of this, and everything that these people are saying right now sounds very stressful to me, what's the first thing they needed to do?
If you're not already tracking, I just use QuickBooks. I think that there are probably other platforms out there. QuickBooks works for me. You can set up your bank accounts, your credit card, whatever you're using directly to QuickBooks. And literally, even if you don't want to set up a separate spreadsheet with P&L, and I mean, ours is super extensive, but with the organization we have, it makes sense why we track what we do. Even if all you do is get real and right with your numbers and track expenses through QuickBooks, you can pull a report at the end of the month and it'll show you how much money you brought in and how much money went out. And all you have to look at is, did more money come in than went out? Great, I was profitable. And if it's the opposite, okay, my expenses are too high. Can I take a 5 minutes and quickly go through? Is there anything on here that's automatically coming out that I didn't even realize I was still paying for that I could cut? Or if you've cut as much as you can, chances are now we're getting into a lead generation situation where we just need more income coming in. or we need to change our personal expenses, and lifestyle. Like all of these numbers just show us what's taking place in our habits.
Right.
And by looking at these things consistently, we can easily, usually self identify where the issue is. Most of the time, it's going to be with the person that looks back at you in the mirror, just
Yeah.
so you know.
Yeah. Like
But
a little too much on the Botox.
yeah.
It's
But
fine.
I mean, the reality is like as painful as it is, it's just getting real and right and treating this job that we do every single day as a business, not a job, as a business. You are an entrepreneur, you are a business owner, own that. Yes, I am from Indiana again, but own that you are truly owning a business and running it as a business. And that means you have to look at expenses. That means you have to create budget. That means you have to spend time doing these things even if it's not fun. And if you end up in a position where you have some consistent profit and this is draining you, that's where you can look at hiring outside talent to help you. If you need to look at a CPA or an accountant that runs these things for you and then just sends you a report to look at, great. But you also have to do the work to be able to get to that point, to be able to afford to have that CPA and accountant be able to help
Well,
you.
and
But
even
again, they're just talent that you're hiring and you're
well,
going to
even Quick,
budget for it.
right. Well, even QuickBooks isn't free.
No.
So, so even if you have to print out or, pull up on your computer your statements and start making a spreadsheet that line items at all, that's what you got to do. You know, my coach has to actually send me this because I have like my own budget, but she has a spreadsheet that has where you label all your expenses, but it's like labeled by wants or sorry, luxuries, need to spends, like entertainment, like she has it like micro, like
Okay.
so that's my personal next venture is like going into like micro details on my spending. It's like, okay, I spent 60 cents to upgrade an extra shot in my coffee. Was that a need or a want or luxury, right?
Yeah.
And getting like that micro with it, I guess I would say. Um, before we kind of move on to any discussion and Q&A with everyone, what else would you say about this topic? I mean, I think this is something that I think you've gotten really passionate about and you've
Oh,
taught, and I think that has taught you a lot by teaching it. What other things would you recommend or what else would you suggest?
yeah, there's two things that I think drastically change the trajectory of my life and my business. One is profit first. I know I taught something, I think it was on Queer and
We did
Successful,
something.
right?
Yeah.
Probably like a year plus ago. So there's probably an old call that you can look at, but we're not going to bore you with a full presentation on it today. Profit First, that book literally changed my life. I have a sticky note right here that sits on my computer with my Profit First numbers. You can hardly see it, but it
Love that.
says um, my profit first number. So when income comes into our business, it immediately gets distributed out into accounts based on percentages that I set and I evaluate every single quarter. And the goal is to get OPEX, operation expenses down, to get profit up, and to keep taxes and payroll as minimal and consistent as possible. And so that is something that I look at every single quarter. It took me about 2.5 years to figure out the numbers that make sense for our business. And so now we've probably had these profit first numbers for like a year. But anyways, if you've never heard of this, read the book or go find the old call. It drastically changed my life, and this is what helps me make sure that I have allocated funds for very specific things going to very specific accounts. It's not that I get a random $15,000 commission check that sits in my bank account and all of a sudden I start thinking, ooh, I'd love to get a new bag or new shoes, or maybe I should book that vacation and all of that stuff. And then it starts dwindling down, dwindling down. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, I need to clip coupons. I need to go work part-time or Uber or whatever. Like it's all about allocating these funds to the proper accounts. And then I never have to worry if I have enough money for taxes because that money already gets allocated over to that account. Or operation expenses or payroll or anything else. It's all already allocated and I never have to worry about it. And that's also what allows me to continue to beef up reserves because when we have excess in those accounts, If I have more than what I need in an OpEx account for a month, great. I'm going to distribute that excess amount over to the OpEx reserves account, which is in an online savings account that I have. Okay. And I can keep beefing those things up. And then I'm just able to make decisions. And it takes a while to get there, but profit first, I promise, if you stick with it, if you do it, if you do your profit first numbers on every single commission check, it will change your life within probably 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if it doesn't,
yeah,
I don't know what to say because it has changed my life.
yeah, I mean, people don't want to have the conversations with themselves because they fear that there's so much to get to, but it's one of those things that you just have to start,
Yeah.
right? And then once you start, the clarity comes. The rest of it's like you gotta have to get the momentum going. It doesn't just happen overnight. Like you're not gonna get all your stuff in order right away. So just kind of start with where you start with. And are you using anything to like help hold you accountable, or is it just your conversations with your team?
Hold me accountable as in
But
like,
just keeping up with it all. Do you have these conversations with a coach or another person?
yeah, I mean, so those financial partners, the CPA, the financial advisors, my former director of operations used to run our P&L and everything like that. So we would have those financial meetings. I still have financial meetings every single month to go over those numbers and things like that. So there are people, like I said, that I've had to put in place for me that help keep me accountable as well and say, hey, we're spending too much money on listing videos. We're spending too much money on staging consultations, like those kinds of things, because we really don't spend money on external things. It's all typically stuff that's reinvested in the business. And yet I can also get out of hand on that really quickly. I can spend $700 on a $200,000 house that's at the end of the day probably not going to net me as much as spending that kind of money on something that's a higher price point. So I have to just have people that keep me in check because as the entrepreneur, I'm always like, "Ooh, if I spend $1, I'll make more money,
Right.
or this is a worthwhile investment." And so those people kind of help ground me and just make sure they're here to just advise. At the end of the day, as the business owner, you make the decisions, but your decisions are either going to help you rise or going to help you fall. And those people are just there to keep guardrails in place to make sure that I don't do what I typically could do, which is outspend everything that comes in.
And remember, trips to Cancun are a write-off.
They can be, yeah. If you do it the right way, if you do it the right way.
Do it the right way, they can be a write-off. Awesome. I appreciate it. I appreciate this conversation so much, Cam. And for anyone who needs a reference to, where you should be spending money, how you should be, distributing your spend, the MREA book for real estate agents, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, has a section. It's page, ironically, I opened it right away. Page 193 has some guides and references for you on how much you should be spending on what. But start with the clarity is really what I think the biggest takeaway I would say from this conversation is, and be kind to yourself with that clarity. Thanks for listening today, friends. If you enjoyed this call, do not forget to join Queer and Successful, the community on Facebook, as well as register to participate in these calls live every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern at successfulcall.com. See you next time. Bye.